Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor gives you sports betting tips. This is Major League Baseball for Thursday, May 30th. Cousin Jared, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's kind of like a nice, vacation. And, when you get back from vacation, it makes you just like really, really appreciate what you get to do day in and day out. And for me, that's being on this show.
I mean, that's probably better than coming back from vacation and going back to a real job, which this is,
a lot more fun. That happens too. Yeah, This is more fun. I mean, my day job's fun, but this is more fun.
Recap of Tuesday. Won the play of the day. Missed our free show pick. Had the under in Boston-Baltimore. Ton of runs early on and then nothing. And then Boston, like a bunch of jerks, blows it in the ninth inning. Scoring too many runs. The other A grades, though, continuing to the honorable mention A grades, continuing to chip away at that 3% ROI. Folks, I posted this on Twitter after yesterday. Now, here the last 3+ weeks, again, not an arbitrary end date. The day before this, we made a lot of money. So if it was arbitrary, I would have included that day. This is the day that I decided to restructure the grades again for ease of understanding of what's happening. And every single category between first five full game, sides and totals, the best model picks are all profitable. That's kind of what you want to see. This is how we draw it up right here. I don't really know what else there's to say other than that's a beautiful slide.
It is a beautiful slide. It's the numbers aren't quite as big as the NFL was, but reminding me of
that was ridiculous.
Just like how it didn't matter what we did with the NFL.
Yeah.
Right. So it's good to see that that's for now the case in baseball as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I posted this on Twitter, and the idea is that it's not going to be winning every day. We're not going to make you rich overnight. Unfortunately, we can't do that. That's not a realistic goal. But, even on a night where totals struggled here, the sides won. And so overall was positive. And those ROIs there all, 2 to 6%, just slow and steady. And that's what baseball has typically done for us. And so it's good to kind of finally be back in the good graces of baseball. And so again, if you want to sign up and get all of those picks, all the models, best picks, the Discord chat where you can talk to me, Cousin Jared, ask us questions, all the picks, the play of the day, all sorts of summary information, more information on the weather and the totals in the first five, etc. Dub Club is the place to be. That QR code will take you there, or the link in the show description, especially for those of you on the audio-only platform. Some quick reminders, pickswiththeprofessor.com/news, where you're going to go for information about the model named Sideline and the community rules. Weather is subject to change. We are 24 hours out. Here we are projecting an average game. We do not know what will happen in one game, and so that's why we always talk about price mattering. Anything is a good pick at the right price or the right number. Doesn't mean it'll happen, but that's what we're looking for, and that's what we'll talk about for each of the games that we cover. But of course, as always, take what you like and leave the rest. Last but not least, if you could like the show, we would like that. 2 afternoon games that we are going to skip here. The first one we're skipping is the Cubs Brewers. We're skipping that one because it's priced pretty well. And Cousin Jared, you and I both have a combined nothing to say, really, about that one that has not already been said ad nauseum from me on the show before.
Yep, and nothing like wouldn't expect anything to change the weather with this being played in Milwaukee. It's not like we say, okay, look at the weather in the morning, check the totals. Weather is what it is inside the stadium there. So, nothing going to change, I don't think.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. It's two pitchers who I think I'm down on both of them. I'd like to fade both of them. But unfortunately, the total is not at a spot where we can fade them via that way. But the only thing I'll say about that really is, again, both those guys, if you look under the hood, neither one of them look as good as their ERA. We're also skipping the A's and the Rays, which is one of my favorite series of the year, anytime the A's and Rays play, just because of the rhyming factor there. We're skipping that one. Neither team's confirmed a starting pitcher, so we have no idea what's actually going to happen in that game. And as we talked about, most of this show is talking about starting pitchers. And as that changed, because Jared, the A's have been our darling. We've talked a lot about the A's. I just want to give you a minute to say anything about the A's that you felt like saying, because we've long been a proponent of backing them when the price has been right. They've been on a roller coaster right this year, looking so great and then looking terrible lately. What are your A's thoughts?
Well, and I mean, what would you expect from the A's? I mean, it's not going to be consistent baseball at all. I think this is more what I expected from the A's last year that I didn't get, like moments where they were fine and then moments where they were awful. And unfortunately, last year they were just mostly awful. But the thing,
our boy.
Yeah, that is true. The thing I wanted to ask you about was, we've talked a little bit about him on the show, Mason Miller. You can't say enough good things about him. There was even an article about him in the Wall Street Journal today, and so love it when the Wall Street Journal ventures into sports because it's like worlds colliding, and also you can tell that they struggle to get 5 paragraphs out of a sports story, which fine, they're making an effort. But not the most in-depth piece that you've ever read. Anyway, Mason Miller. At some point this year, I saw somewhere that he had a negative FIP, and this was on the artist formerly known as Twitter, which, you can believe everything that you see there. And so I said to myself, this does not seem possible that somebody could have a negative FIP. Just using logic here, the best that you can do is 0. And I asked you, is that true? And is it possible for somebody to have a negative FIP? And if so, how is that possible?
Yeah, it is. It's extremely rare. I think, and this is where I think I don't want to lose our audience too much into this. When we talk about things like FIP and XFIP being kind of an extension of that we think is a little bit more predictive on average, there are benefits to using actual FIP based off of ground ball rate and whatnot, because the main difference between the two is home runs allowed versus expected home runs allowed. It's mainly just based off of strikeouts and walks. Those are the two main things that pitchers control. And so when you have a crap ton of strikeouts and no walks, you can end up there. It's because it's scaled to ERA to make it look like that. And so you can kind of you can basically break FIP. And Mason Miller did that. You occasionally see it. You typically will see negative FIPs in the first week or two of the season when some relievers pitched 4 innings, has no walks, and 6 Ks or something. That'll get you a negative FIP. But it goes away really fast when you look at it. And the fact that his is so dang low is just impressive. He's been one of the best pitchers this season. And at some point I looked up and saw that he was the 3rd best reliever on all the sideline, which is crazy as a rookie.
Yeah. For the number, I was going to say, for the number of innings that he's thrown, for sideline to already make that judgment, because we've mentioned all the time, sideline is not built to adjust super quickly to things, and especially you talk about the number of innings that relievers have, small sample sizes. The fact that it's already made that jump is definitely indicative of something, I would say. Yeah,
his underlying metrics and of course all the strikeouts and everything is just kind of proof that hey, this isn't a mirage. You don't strike out that many people the way he's been doing, and get that many swings and misses. Right, some of the other things you look at under the hood, like him, he's been really impressive. But we do love back in the A's when we can. Sometimes. The price isn't right, but again, we can't talk about that game soon or anything. So on to the first game we will talk about. We'll cover the rest of the games here. 1 p.m. Eastern, Royals and the Twins, low 70s, a slight breeze in, maybe across. Maybe stronger at times. The question is just going to be, is it in or across? Going to play maybe a little pitcher friendly, but if that wind's blowing in, it's going to play much more pitcher friendly than if it's across. It'll play pretty neutral. Brady Singer and Chris Paddock. Paddock's better than his underlying metrics suggest. Brady Singer's not as good as his ERA suggests, but still having a great season. Both these guys project very similarly. The Twins, of course, are the better team on offense, and they're the better set of relievers. This is a fun battle here for the AL Central. The Royals, Twins, and Guardians all kind of hanging in there still at the top of the division. Because, Jared, I think this is an interesting case, and I'm curious to get your thoughts. We haven't talked about this game at all ahead of time, so you could say anything at this point, and you have free reign to speak your own mind. I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at trying to, looking under the hood here between these two pitchers. The fact that the model is still saying these two pitchers are this close, Brady Singer with a 96 grade and Chris Paddock with a 98 grade, is a little surprising to me. I think the model's a little bit slow maybe to react. I kind of think the gap's a little bigger than that. I don't know what you think about this. I think Paddock's a very fine pitcher, but I've been really impressed with Brady Singer. 332 xFIP this season, but he's being projected still much higher than that. And so this is one where I personally am looking at this, the model saying there's an edge on the Twins. I agree with that. I'm not sure it's as big as the model thinks, though, because I think Singer's a little bit better than it realizes. So the model says 61%. The market says 54%. I think the truth's probably in between. If I had to say myself, I'd probably put this more at 57, 58% on the Twins. Still says there's a Twins edge, but I'm just not sure it's quite this big. So I think the model's a little slow to react here to Brady Singer and how good he's looked this year. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, and I said this last time and looked like an idiot, that I just think that the Royals aren't quite as good on the road as they are at home. And I remember last time I came on here and said that they were playing at the Angels, and they whooped up on the Angels that particular night. So I went and looked a little deeper. It's like, am I just imagining that the Royals are still bad on the road? And their record on the road so far this year, they are about 500, maybe a game or two above 500. But if you look at who the Royals have played on the road, they've played Baltimore. Okay, good team. The Mets, not good. White Sox, not good. Detroit, Toronto, somehow not good. The Angels, not good. The Mariners, okay. The Mariners, fine. Rays, and then the Twins. Like, I feel like this is the first fairly decent team that they've played, besides the Orioles, like the first week of the season. The fairly decent team they've played on the road all season. So for me, I think this seems about right. What sideline has here feels about right to me. I think the Twins should be favored in a little bit of value. Note to self, I'm not going to fade the Royals as much on the road against bad teams, but I still think it is a good thing to do for when they're playing those decent to good teams.
We had the Twins here as the free show play of the day here for Tuesday, or for Wednesday, or what are days? For Wednesday. We're recording this on Wednesday before they have played, so we don't know how it's gone. I will say, though, it happened with the play of the day, and it happened with the Twins, and it's happened with these totals. Some of these night before picks, we're getting insane closing line value on. We gave out the Twins, and the price was more in the like minus 115-ish range, and then all of a sudden it's like jumped 20 cents higher as the markets realize that the Twins should be bigger favorites in the Wednesday night game. Doesn't mean they'll win, and sometimes we get this big closing line value, and it's just like it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
But I feel like the same thing's going to happen here. It's not the show pick for this. I will say it's Twins or pass, but it does feel like the same thing here. That I just wouldn't be surprised if we wake up on Thursday morning or Thursday midday. As this game's getting close to starting and the Twins are out to like minus 145 or something like that, because they're such a good team. Their offense is so good, and it's struggled some this year because of the injuries, but they're a little bit healthier now, and that matters. Their bullpen's so good. And so if the starting pitching is even close, the fact this game's in Minnesota, like you said, the Royals, maybe a little bit of a mirage here. That's what the model's kind of been telling us all season. So Twins are pass from us. I think the price should be higher. Any last thoughts on the Royals or Twins, Cousin Jared, before we move on to the late afternoon slot?
Nope.
All right. Astros and the Mariners, 4 p.m. Eastern, the only 4 p.m. game on this Thursday. Mid-50s for this one. Slight breeze blowing in. Of course, a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. We all know that in Seattle. Spencer Arrighetti and Logan Gilbert. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you pretty quickly on this one. Logan Gilbert's good. We know that. 89 grade. Good underlying metrics, good season. His ERA is going to be lower than his underlying metrics because he plays in such a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but he's still a really good pitcher. Like, nothing new to say about that. We know that. Mariners' offense is okay. The bullpen's okay. Bullpen's numbers are going to look better because they're playing half their games in that park. Model still likes the Astros bullpen. We talked about that. Brian Presley's the one guy, and I said this last night before the inning blew up on Tuesday's game. Presley's the one guy that I'm like, I don't know if he's fine. I think everybody else is fine. Abreu's looking good. Presley's the one who's like, he looks kind of lost, but other than him, everything looks fine for that Astros bullpen. I've been preaching that for a while. They've been pretty good for the most part, Presley aside. Astros offense still looks good when you look at a lot of the metrics. Spencer Arrighetti is the guy I want to talk about.
Oh, God. Okay.
Looked disastrous early on.
Yeah.
And now it's like...
Which you knew that level of terribleness could not persist for too long. I mean, he's a Major League Baseball player.
Right. Although the question was, should he be? That was the thing, is that you're sitting there going, with all the injuries, and like we kind of forget about him, but a guy like Luis Garcia should be in the Astros rotation. He's out right now, and Urquidy's out, who's again only a questionable Major League pitcher, but Lance McCullers is still out. I don't even know if we'll ever see him again, unfortunately, as sad as that is. All these injuries, and so we're like, this is like their 10th best starting pitcher, so maybe he shouldn't be a Major League pitcher. But folks, I think he might be figuring it out, because I'm curious your take. His ERA is still really inflated at 6.93. His FIP is below 4. His XFIP's at 409. The model gives him a 104 grade. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, like he might be turning a corner. And I'm not saying he's an ace, but like, becoming an okay pitcher. What is your take on this?
I have no use for ERA. Like what does ERA even matter, really? So you said that his ERA is still high. Don't look at it. But I do look at the grade here, and I feel like Sideline's grade on Arrighetti was like a 110 or a 115.
I think it was a 120 at first, after that first like bad start, and then then it was like 115, and like it's been like slowly coming down.
And it's just like slow and steady progress, and this is what you see about guys that have turned the corner or fallen off. This works the other way too. I have a pitcher that's a 90 and it's like slowly gets up to 100 and then 105.
That's Verlander.
So anyway, I like what I've seen from Arrighetti. I think obviously still not the favorite in a matchup against Logan Gilbert, obviously. But I think he's he can do well enough to keep the Astros in the game. When I look at this one, I feel like we talked about before, the Mariners have some strengths. The Mariners also have some weaknesses. The Astros have they've been fine since, I don't know, what was it, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago? Yeah, whatever it's been. They've been fine. I feel like these are two fine teams right now. And if I can get one of those fine teams at something like plus 130, sign me up. Didn't care if it was the Mariners or the Astros. I don't care. I think these teams are fairly evenly matched. And so just the fact that there's one side where I can get something like plus 130, that's really the biggest thing for me here.
And that's the thing here. The model says this is pretty close to 50-50. Don't get too distracted by 51%. That's within the margin of error. The model just says this is a toss-up game that, yes, the Mariners are at home and they'll have an edge with Logan Gilbert, but the edge won't be so big to overcome the fact that the Astros have a much better offense. And so that's our free show A-grade play of the day here, Astros plus 130. And I'm with you. If I get the Mariners plus 130, I'd love that too. It's the fact that I don't know what's going to happen in this game. Arrogate has pitched a lot better lately as an Astros fan, watching a little bit more of their games than other teams. And I do want to just come back to that point. You're right, 6.93 ERA, and you talked about you don't look at ERA, and so some people might be watching this and they might take offense to that. But I think as a reminder, and I don't want to beat the drum too much on this, but just as a reminder with ERA, it is a little bit of a question of like, what is ERA even measuring? Because earned runs don't really exist. What does exist is runs. Runs are a thing that matters, right? Mm-hmm. What does an earned run even mean, especially given how subjective it is to a scorekeeper and how subjective it is based off of, or the impact of where you position a fielder changes some of that. So it's like, when you really think about it, I know people are like, well, what does FIP even mean? Whatever. And it's like, well, I can tell that to you if you want, but it's a mathematical combination of strikeouts, walks, and home runs allowed, which are the things that we found to be most predictive with pitchers. But with ERA, it's like, I don't really even know I get what it's trying to do, but it's a very crude metric because you put the shortstop in a slightly different place, a hit turns to an out, and the pitcher had nothing to do with that. So why are we judging the pitcher based off where the shortstop was, or if the error happened or not, or if the error happened with 1 out or 2 outs, and thus the home run is now unearned? We still gave up a home run. Who cares if there was an error before? Don't give up home runs, right? Things like that. So it's like, I want to just kind of soften everyone to ERA is, if you're sitting there going, I don't know what FIP is, like, do you really know what ERA is? It's probably just as good. Question that a little bit. And that's where it's like, hey, take the ERAs out of it. And absolutely Gilbert's the better pitcher. I'm not saying he's not, but when you look under the hood, it's like, maybe by not that much, maybe by just a little bit, right?
Yeah. And I guess I would slightly retract my statement that I don't look at ERA. There are certain instances, and the two people that come to mind are Tony Gonsolin and Bryce Elder a couple of years ago, where the underlying metrics just they were not there.
And for Elder, it was that insane ground ball rate that he had.
And so there's just, and if this only works with starters, like at some point you can get 2/3 into the season and just be like, look, there's something that sideline, the advanced metrics are not picking up on this season. Probably shouldn't fade Tony Gonsolin anymore. Just because it's probably going to say
throwback to like two years ago or 3 years ago, whatever that was.
And so I do use it, but it's in very specific cases, only with starters, when it has been just a season of like the underlying metrics are missing something for an extended period of time. That's the only time I look at ERA. I feel like I owe it to the audience to give them that disclaimer.
And it is funny you mentioned that with Bryce Elder, because ever since that run, the underlying metrics have lined up pretty dang well with his ERA, which goes back to the point of like, it's going to come back eventually. Those underlying metrics are so much more predictive. And ERA is a fine predictor in the long run. It's just long run might be 2 or 3 seasons, right? And so it's not going to be as good of a predictor here this early in the season. Anyway, Astros plus 138, great play of the day here on this show. Diamondbacks and the Mets, 7:10 p.m. Eastern, about 60 degrees or so in New York. Wind blowing across. Going to play pretty pitcher friendly as it normally does, especially on a chilly night. Zach Gallen and Christian Scott. Christian Scott's looked really good so far in his young major league career, 4 starts. ERA, FIP, and xFIP all in the upper 3s. Zach Gallen having another great season. ERA, FIP, xFIP all in the lower 3s. Gallen's the better pitcher. Otherwise, these two teams are pretty similar. The Mets, the model still loves the bullpen. It might actually like the bullpen a little bit more that Diaz is on the IL just because of whatever the heck was going on with him here as of late. I think both offenses are fine. I think what I've been saying all along is like there aren't that many offenses I really trust in baseball right now. And I think with the Diamondbacks 10th and the Mets 13th is like, yeah, that's about right, because I'm having a really hard time thinking of 9 other offenses that I'm like, yeah, I really love at this point, because a lot of them that have been good, I'm a little bit nervous that they can keep that up. And a lot of them that haven't been good are the ones that are supposed to be better. So, a team like the Blue Jays, for instance. The thing I want to talk about in this game, Zach Gallen on the road. Because how do you feel about that? How do you go about handicapping? Because it's one we've talked about a lot. I'm just going to read you some of the numbers here. If you look at this year, and I'm not going to over focus on this year, but folks, this year, we're going to use opponent weighted on base average, 282 at home, 312 on the road. That kind of matters. That's a little bit more predictive than ERA because it's a batter by batter basis. That's a 20-point difference over his career. And all pitchers pitch better at home, but this is a pretty big difference here. Home weighted on base against 272, on the road 294. It's 22 points difference, and that's translated to an ERA. And we said ERA is a little bit more predictive once you get to this number of innings. He's thrown over 350 innings on home and on the road. 282 ERA in the career at home, 360 on the road. 360 road ERA is not bad, and he'll do fine in this park, being a pitcher ballpark. But I just wonder, like, he's one of the more extreme home road guys. I don't want to make too much of that. Typically, I think people start chasing their tails when they start talking about it. It's not the most predictive thing. We got to stay focused on what's predictive and what's not. That's my skill set as a statistician. But you see something like this with the home road splits for Gallen, and I'm curious, like, what do you make of it, Cousin Jared?
I would, to your point, after I said I don't pay attention to ERA, 360 ERA is fine. I think you need to focus on the positives there, which is he's really good at home. Like that's something you keep in mind from that. I don't think you really take much about, do you not back him on the road? He's a perfectly fine pitcher on the road. I would just say more of keep it in mind that he's really, really good at home. For me, this is just more about our friends, the Mets, and I've talked about it a few times, but like the vibes aren't good. At least me coming into the season, I didn't think, well, number one, the record almost can't be as bad as it was last year. It could have been worse, but it's unlikely that the record was going to be worse than they were last year. But there could not be a worse feeling than what you had last year when you spent all of that money in the offseason and then see like none of it come to fruition and kind of get anything from it. But somehow here we are, and they are 10 games below 500. And like you said, Diaz is on the IL. Alonso, I saw might have gotten hurt in the game today. Like it's just things aren't good. I'm back in the Diamondbacks all day on this one. For me, this is like I know that it says that the Mets are the play here, but it's just a lean. This is enough for me to say no, pass. I'm just going to stay away on this one. And if I had to pick a side, I would probably pick the Diamondbacks.
That's where I was wondering, Gallen's such a good pitcher and you love backing him. I think the thing here, and the reason why the model kind of likes the Mets, is a little bit about Christian Scott. Of course, if the lineup changes from this projection because of an injury, that could change things as well. And that could be something that the books are already factoring in that I haven't updated in the model yet. So of course, those updates come in the morning, and sometimes they change based off of what's happened injury-wise, because again, this is a player-based model. The other question I want to ask you, Cousin Jared, is the model would tell us to go under on this one. Market here is at 7.5, a little bit of juice at the end. I think it's minus 115. We've got it at 7. How do you feel about the under?
Well, better now, because I'm just making sure that I'm not lying to our audience here. Pete Alonso exited the series finale against the Dodgers with his hit on the right hand by a pitch in the first inning. So yeah, sure, under. Sign me up.
Yeah, and that's obviously a big deal.
Yeah.
Luis Arias got hit on the hand as well, and they were concerned about him. So multiple guys getting hit in the hand here on this Wednesday afternoon. That's not good. So under or pass kind of might be the way we're looking at that one. Tigers and the Red Sox, 7 p.m. Eastern, mid-50s, slight breeze, little in, little across, little out, little all over the place. Hitter-friendly park, though. Nick Pivetta has been very fine, 4.20 ERA. XFIP's pretty good. FIP's a little bit higher. Model's kind of taking a run-of-the-mill approach. The story here in this game, and we talk about, I don't want to spend too much time talking about offenses and bullpens. They don't really change day to day. The biggest thing on the show that's going to change day to day is starting pitching. The biggest story in this game, in my opinion, is Jack Flaherty, who I swear has been at times talked about as the best pitcher in baseball and the worst pitcher in baseball. And that's quite an impressive feat to have both, and the most injured pitcher in baseball.
Hey, the last guy that I remember having that conversation about was Barry Zito. Maybe I'm missing somebody, but
that's
I feel
probably
like anyway.
That's probably right. There was a time when Barry Zito was one of the best, and of course he was had to, in pitcher friendly ballparks. So had a year where I think he had like a 6 ERA, which is crazy. Flaherty's looking really good. He has a 3.84 ERA, but again, we talk about doesn't really mean too much. The FIP's in the upper twos, xFIP of 203. He's looking like the real deal, and so that's to me the big story on this one. We're right in lockstep with the market, though. Look at how close this is: 48% for the Tigers for us and the market. The total is within a 100th of a run, so we're pretty much saying there's not a lot of value either way. But what's your insight for us on this game?
I feel like Nick Pivetta started the season fine, and now I look up, or maybe even good, and I look up now, and he's got a 101 rating. So this is something where I just have this is something I'm tracking is what I would say. To your point, these metrics that you use are usually more indicative of future success than some of the usual statistics that are out there. I don't really have much to say about this game other than I'm watching Nick Pivetta and what Sideline thinks of him because I felt like it really liked him early in the season, and that has changed. Where now he's just meh.
I'm going to say it had a lot to do with his last start against the Brewers, where he didn't make it out of the fourth inning. 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, and had an xFIP in that game of 614.
I'll do it.
A bunch of runs too. So I'm guessing it was that game that really brought him a lot further back. Okay. And again, though, the question with him, I think too, is he's got one of the biggest differences between FIP and xFIP right now. He's been a little bit unlucky with giving up the home runs. The underlying metrics, if you assume home run rate is normal for him going forward, would be a little bit more kind to him. But yeah, I think this is a fascinating story between these two pitchers. Folks, always though, shop around. The prices here that we are using, we are in lockstep with this market, but the market changes and is different at every sports book. If you have multiple accounts in your book, you can win more when you win, lose less when you lose. At least have 3 or 4 out there to shop around. It can make a huge difference. If you don't have an account with them yet, BetUS is a place that you should be at. Sign up, link in the show description. 125% bonus still on your first ever 3 deposits.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
One more 7 o'clock game here, 7:20 p.m. Eastern start. Nats and the Braves. Mid-70s to start, upper 60s to close. Wind blowing out. Might play a little hitter-friendly. As always, I think the story is starting pitching. Trevor Williams and Ronaldo Lopez. Both of these guys have had fantastic seasons. ERA-wise, Lopez is a little bit better. Both guys have FIPs in the upper 2s. Both guys have xFIPs in the upper 3s. And so the model is looking at this saying, both of them are probably going to get a little bit worse going forward, but a little bit worse still being very good. It's just to say maybe they aren't quite as good as they look, but they've still had really good years. And again, my cousin Jared, my question to you is, how do we feel about a guy like Trevor Williams who looks like a completely new pitcher? And rarely do I say this, but you do look at him and wonder, should we just throw out last year and before because of the pitch, repertoire change he's made and what he looks like going forward? Again, I'm not sure he's going to be that 2.29 ERA pitcher going forward, but even that 3.73 xFIP is still so much better than he's ever been. I've loved Ronaldo Lopez too. How do we view these 2 starting pitchers? Because I think that determines how you handicap this game. Otherwise, we know the Braves have the better offense and the better bullpen. But the gap between these 2 starting pitchers is the real question to say, just by how much should the Braves be favored?
Yeah, maybe in this game, you could convince me of that. Specifically because with where the markets are right now, you're going to have to lay a big number to back the Braves. So at least me personally, I'm always a little bit leery of laying a big number like that, and then especially
minus 220 right now on the Braves, which is
and especially when you factor in, it's like, has Sideline really nailed Trevor Williams. If not, if he is better than what Sideline thinks he is, which every indication is that he is so far this year, that would make laying that minus 220 even less fun. So this may be like maybe take Braves run line, something like that if you really need a side here. I do want to say one thing that I'm looking at with the Acuna injury. Is there going to be a little bit of value on the Braves because of how much he means to the team? And don't get me wrong, one of the best players in baseball, absolutely. But the rest of the Braves still really good. Is there going to be a moment where people are kind of devaluing the Braves and the rest of that team just because Acuna is out? I don't know the answer to that question, but something that I am watching, because even if he's not there, the Braves still a very, very good baseball team. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on the next few weeks.
We faded the Braves in their first game without Acuna, and that was largely because of our boy Mitchell Parker, who I've been preaching all season as a great pitcher. Related to that, of course, Ben Brown's the other guy I've been preaching. Both those guys had pretty big games here this week, and so I'm wondering if the secret's out and people are going to kind of realize. But if y'all been listening, y'all been hearing me talk about both of those guys. But you are right, I think, with the Braves, and getting Riley back at least helps keep their offense kind of okay. Yeah. Obviously, with Riley and with Acuna, they have one of the top offenses, kind of in that top four category: Astros, Yankees, Dodgers, and Braves. Without one of those guys, it drops behind that. Without both of them, it drops even another tier. So at least getting Riley back as Acuna went out helps alleviate that. But you have to, I mean, if you're a Braves fan, obviously you've had a lot of success lately. You've got a World Series title here a few years ago. You've got all these stars locked up or whatever, but you have to be really upset at the injury gods here for losing Strider and Acuna in the same year. But they're still a really good team, and anything can happen. Of course, a little bit overshadowed by the fact that the Phillies started off so hot, coming back to earth a little bit here as of late with the few losses. But the Braves, the model says 72%. Market says 67% right now. My hunch is that 67% jumps up and that number gets even bigger. But if the model's missing a little bit on Trevor Williams, that might actually be only 71%, 70%. So that gap gets a little bit smaller. If I'm playing this for the Braves, I'm probably looking more at the -1. Y'all know I personally like that a little better. Of course, you could also try a money line parlay. But again, either way, if it's not a good play by itself, it's not a good play in a parlay. And so that's the fear, is just how good is Trevor Williams? And that's, I think, the question you have to ask yourself before betting on this game. I think he's probably a little bit better than the model thinks at this point, because he's one of those guys where I think we should throw out previous season's data. I'm going off of a formula that is that's going to be the best going forward for that mix. But for each player, sometimes you should rely more or less on one. And that's kind of more of the art of this. And I don't want to put my hands on that, because I want it to be more cold, hard math. And then we can talk about what I would do. So I think we should probably disregard some of previous season's data more, which makes them a little bit better. So I think that Braves is maybe a little bit smaller than the model realizes. A late game here for us: Yankees and the Angels, 9:38 p.m. Eastern, mid to low 60s for this one. Wind blowing a little bit out, might play slightly hitter friendly, but pretty average. Carlos Correa, Patrick Sandoval, a pair of lefties. This is another interesting pitching matchup. Carlos on 2.95 ERA, 4.41 FIP, 4.52 xFIP. That's not very good. Patrick Sandoval, 5.60 ERA, but 3.90 FIP, 3.89 xFIP. If you look at the underlying metrics, Sandoval's been the better pitcher this season. The model still grades Rodon better because, again, we don't use just this season, and this season should be a small amount of what we know about a player, because what they did last year is usually very relevant. Rodon's obviously an interesting case, though, with his career, the injuries, what happened last year. This is a game where I'm going to say the same thing I say all the time with the Angels. If you're back in the Angels, you almost want to do a first five and avoid that bullpen. Last night, then again, we're recording this on Wednesday. So when I say last night, that's Tuesday night's game. They were down 1 after 5 because they gave up the tying run in the 5th, and then they came back and scored 2 later and won. So it doesn't always hold, but depending on what the price is, maybe the first 5 is a better way to look at it. How are you eyeing this game?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I think first 5 is definitely where I'm looking here. You could convince me that Sideline says that the pitchers are evenly matched. You could convince me that Sandoval might be a little bit better right now, and so maybe a slight edge there on the mound to the Angels. But and like there were certain teams that were like this, and the A's were like this last year, where it's like the bullpen, you just want to know part of it. Like it wasn't worth the heartburn. So for like me personally, this is what allows me to, sleep at night. Is not,
especially being the only late game. We can, you 5 innings over, you go to bed. You don't have to work. You don't have to stay up, right?
Yeah, and don't have to stay up, and also don't have to worry about the Angels bullpen. And so really, this is like whatever makes you feel better. If that's full game, that's fine. For me, I like the first 5 plays anyway, and so this just kind of helps with that.
And I think you make a great point there, bringing it back to the A's last year. Folks, as bad as the A's were last year, they did win some games, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of remind us that don't think just about Tuesday and say Tuesday they lost the first 5. I think that was our Twitter play. And then they came back and won the game, right? That sort of thing is going to happen on occasion. But when you think about the bigger picture, larger sample, like the A's last year, you did better if you did the first 5 in the full game, because while there were moments like that, there were way more moments where the opposite happened, where they had a lead or were tied early on, and then they couldn't hold on, blew it in extras or whatever. You get the extra innings. And this Yankee bullpen, again, maybe a little bit depleted, not quite as good as they could be based off a couple of the injuries, but still much better than this Angels bullpen. So doesn't mean something like that can't happen again, but in the long run, it's probably better, just like you said, to avoid the heartburn, to avoid the bullpen altogether. So it's kind of an Angels or pass situation. I think we like the Yankees a lot here on Wednesday night. Always love it when there's value in the Yankees, but in this case, I think there's probably value fading Rodon and backing Sandoval, because I think people are looking at these ERAs and saying, oh, Carlos Rodon's the much better pitcher. Again, when you look under the hood, I'm not sure that's the case at all. I think there's a chance that that Sandoval's the better pitcher. If not, they're pretty close. And I think because of that, we're getting some value in the Angels, but probably going to be playing them on the first 5. All depends on the price and what we're seeing in the morning. All that stuff officially out to Dub Club. If you want to join us there, that QR code, the link in the show description, gets you so many other benefits. Cousin Jared, why should the people join Dub Club? I'm just putting you on the spot here. I didn't tell you that I was going to make you give an elevator pitch, but give us your elevator pitch for why people should join Dub Club.
It's really all about the community. So number one, it's about the data. Okay, that's the number one thing. I feel like everybody is aware of that. You flash up here all the time about, hey, here are the things that you get on Dub Club, whether it's just reading. We talk about some of this stuff. Sometimes you absorb it better by reading. You read through it, talk about the weather, all of that good stuff. So that's the number one reason to join. The number 2 reason is the community of people there. Whether any interest that you might have, I promise that there is a part of the community that has a similar interest that you do as well, and you can find some discussion and drive some discussion about those things. So, literally the most random sports things you can come up with. You can find discussions there with us on Discord. So I think those are the 2 primary reasons to join.
Yep. It's a great Discord group. If you like chatting with other people, I don't have an NBA model, at least as of yet, but there's always NBA talk with playoffs happening there about what people should do. So a lot of fun things over on Discord, which you can only get through Dub Club. So you can check that link out in the show description. Otherwise, though, as always, thank you for watching. Best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.